This podcast is brought to you in part by Stash.
Hello and welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. We are at episode 813. This is being recorded on March 5, 2025. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walbrith.
I'm Brett Van Sprumer.
And I'm Kent Burgess.
It was Buddy Jesus there for a moment.
Yeah.
That worked.
Good.
The resemblance is uncanny.
The Buddy Jesus is actually my picture in our brochure for my workplace.
Lovely.
The Buddy Christ.
Yeah.
It instills confidence, I am sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just so friendly. You can go to patreon.com/PCPer to help this podcast and all of our efforts here at the site to continue. And speech therapy for me as well. It's all on the list. And to be a part of it. Be a part of this art form that is our thing.
Your donations will never be wasted. Never.
Yeah,
They will
just don't-
all go to a good cause.
Yeah, not me. Anything.
Namely, beer and hamburgers.
Oh, hey, speaking of, Josh, what do you got for us this week?
I got nothing. Yeah, I've been down in Denver and hospital, child, reconstructive facial surgery. So all I've had is like hospital food. And the last thing you really want are pictures of hospital food. So yeah, just take that image and invert it and think to yourself, I'm lucky to have missed it. And you know what? That void that I thought existed was actually a balloon that floated away into heaven. And you feel so much better now. So yeah, no food pics.
You know, I was thinking about Josh Sunday because my niece and nephew who live in San Francisco have recently been exploring a lot of the local restaurants. And my nephew sent me a picture from a menu at a restaurant that he had gone to where one of the items was called a bubbly burger. It was a burger topped with your choice of toppings and a bottle of Dom Perignon. $460.
On
Yeah,
the
I was going
burger?
to say that sounds cheap.
Wow. The wait is over. Not like you haven't already seen performance benchmarks and the videos out there, but we have to talk about the biggest graphics launch in what feels like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years. It is the Radeon RX 9070 series. We reviewed multiple cards.
Wait, I thought you were going to start off with the 5070 because that's the
No, he was
biggest.
talking about the exciting one.
No, no. We'll get
Easy.
to the 5070.
Easy
Easy,
mistake,
Josh.
Josh.
Easy. Don't
Easy mistake.
worry.
You got to ease on
Act
into
one.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Act 1, you
We don't
leave on
wanna
a high
bury the
note.
lead. So yeah, the Radeon cards, the saviors of the upper mid-range segment, perhaps. They're great. These are really fast. They're better than I ever expected. If you look at the specs on paper, it's not that exciting. I wasn't expecting a ton when I saw, they're limited to just 64 compute units for the top end SKU, and it's still
Isn't that
GDDR6.
the same as the 7800 XT from the RX?
Yeah, I think so.
7800?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same memory. It's still GDDR6 and it's only 20 gigabit per second. And it's not that exciting. It is, because this monolithic architecture has, as AMD says, twice the ray tracing throughput per CU versus RDNA 3. And that makes such a big difference because so many of these games that we test now and that you play probably have DXR features in them. And you don't have to shy away from ray tracing with Radeon anymore. Just some background, AMD told media to expect slightly lower than 7900 XTX performance in pure raster and faster than XTX performance in ray tracing. And here's Time Spy Extreme, perfect example. It is just a few points away from the XTX. It's just a couple hundred points away, and that 9070 neck and neck with the 7900 XT. And then if you go to Speedway, this is a DXR test. 9070 XT is right there with a 4070 Ti Super and ahead of the 7900 XTX. It's crazy to think that this is such a small chip. The chiplet experiment is over. This is just a traditional monolithic die.
For now.
Well, I hope forever. And I mean, if this scales up at all, is that the concern that this architecture wouldn't necessarily scale? So they would have to do like a dual GPU chiplet thing? Because I don't think they have the bandwidth for that. They told us a couple of years ago they just didn't have the interconnect bandwidth to do GPU.
No, and it's the same thing with the chiplets that they had. Is they just don't have the better latency and bandwidth to compete against a monolithic design. So if you remember back in the 7900 series that they talked about how they had a test system that had double the amount of infinity cache per chiplet, which doubled the amount of like essentially L3 cache for GPUs, there was like less than a 5% increase in performance, even though you doubled the amount of memory available to this chip in a high-speed bus. It's just all balance. And so it's kind of interesting to see what AMD has done here, that they've gone back to a monolithic design after, like the 7800 XT was still a really good card, really good chip. It probably could have been better if it was monolithic, but they made those decisions. They thought that they could really leverage some of the price differences between wafer starts and how much they pay for per wafer by doing this. But then you have the cost of integrating all these chips and chiplets onto essentially an interposer, the COWOS that TSMC offers, and it just didn't make any sense. It just blew back in their faces, and I mean, it was still fast, but it was not competitive with what they were paying and the added complexity of that. So yeah, they have gone back to the monolithic chip, which for now, interconnect technology will change. It will get better, but for now, this is really the best route. When we look back on the last 3 years of what they've been doing, I mean, they canceled very early the big RDNA 4. I mean, AMD only has so many engineering resources. And, 3-4 years ago, they were not doing as well as they are now, obviously.
No, yeah,
and
you're
so
right.
they had to, cut resources. They had to focus on CPUs. They shifted engineering talent to what they thought was the best idea possible. And they cut out the big RDNA 4 because they wanted to focus on the small, which is coming out apparently Q2 this year. They did the mid-range, which takes up a pretty good significant chunk of the enthusiast market. And then they just deep sixed the large. And if you think about how long it takes to not only design, but to validate and then manufacture, go through the issues with the manufacturing, respin, all that stuff, the bigger the chip you have, the more time, the more engineering talent, the more money it takes to get that to market. And so they just chopped that and they said, you know what, we're going to focus on the mid-range and the low end and integrated, and we're just going to spend our engineering resources in there to get caught up to what NVIDIA is doing. And I think as much as you would hate to think is like, what would a big RDNA 4 do in this marketplace? What would happen if they had actually tried to do that and they had shifted engineering resources? Would it have been out 6 months later than what NVIDIA did? I don't know. We can't see the future, but there's only so many man hours that you can apply to any engineering challenge. And I think that they did a pretty good job in balancing that to get a pretty good mid-range card.
Just one last slide here before we move on. Look at this. This is Taylor's Principle 2. newer title, Radeon RX 9070, which is the $549 card, is slightly faster than a 4070 Ti Super, which just a few months ago would have been, card of the year, best gaming GPU of 2024. It was the sweet spot in the RTX 40 series lineup. Now you have the sort of afterthought RX 9070 card matching it pretty frequently. And the XT is actually more of a 5070 Ti competitor than I think a lot of people were expecting. So this could have been a $699 card, considering it's pretty close to the $749 offering from NVIDIA, if they're doing NVIDIA minus $50. Oh, but then before we move on, I do want to say that Sapphire, which let us borrow the Nitro Plus for the 9070 XT, I want to show you that card because there's something very interesting going on.
Sweet looking card.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's not real gaudy at all. There's one little light bar here on the top. Metal backplate. That backplate attaches with 4 magnets, and behind that backplate, that's where things get really interesting, because this card uses a 12-volt high power connector, and it uses it on the back. Under the backplate, there's this area here with an ARGB out and the power connector, and you can connect your power cable and then give it a nice graceful curve and then out the bottom of the card and around.
Oh, nice.
And then cover the whole thing with a backplate that is vented. And then this area right here, this is a pad. There's actually a pad here to protect your fins when you're installing your power connector. The whole thing is very clever.
It might be to protect the cable from the fins.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It's some sort of protection. Well, I just know that because
it's probably flame retardant.
I hope so. I had to unplug and plug this in so many times that I thought, wow, what a clever idea. Because I kept, there's a bit of a recoil when you get it out, and I was sort of bouncing against the foam instead of actually hitting the fins. And plus, it saved my fingers. But yeah, so that's probably, I think you're right, Ken. I think it's just to protect the cable. But
yeah, the real
this.
Newman. An elegant solution to a problem that shouldn't exist.
It's virtually invisible. It looks like one of those all-in-one. You've got just a cable coming out the bottom of the thing. So, very impressed by that. Leave it to Sapphire to fix 12-volt high power. And of course, I mean 12-volt 2x6.
Yeah.
It's the newer cable. And this is only a 330-watt card. So, clearly overkill.
It's not going to melt.
No,
yeah, there was a question we had in chat whether or not that was what your thoughts were on the 12-volt high power. I think that covers it.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It connects really well. You control the angle at the card and not at the case door, and there's not going to be any stress on it. Once you get it seated in there, you can even seat it before you put it in the system. Like I had my 12-volt high power cable, plugged it in, then sat it down and plugged it in. You can do whatever you want. I was on an open test bed, but I had zero issues with it.
And you don't even have to go that way. Like XFX went with 2 8-pins.
3.
So it depends on
3.
Or 3, yeah, sorry. So it's a matter of where you're shopping. So if you want to completely avoid the 12-watt high power, you can.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to, but you can. But I'm just still annoyed that it goes from $599 to, I think one of the highest MSRPs I saw was almost $760.
No, it's
You'll
going to
see
be
higher. You'll see much higher.
That's the MSRP.
No,
not the actual
higher
price.
MSRP.
Yeah.
XFX for the one that I'm still in the middle of testing because I had to quit when I had my GPU testbed crash. But that one is like $839,
$49.
It's insane. It's such a huge spread.
It's going to go up from there. This is just the very beginning. We'll talk about pricing later. But anyway, Josh, speaking of XFX, you had one of their QuickSilver.
Yeah. This is the one close to, MSRP. It's the 9070. And this is an extremely beefy card for this price range. Okay, let me hold up. Oh my gosh. This is the 7900 XTX. I know it's hard to see because it's really hard to hold. okay, this is the 9070. So as you can see, it's essentially just as large and damn near as heavy. This is
It's
one of
arm
the
day for
coolest.
Josh.
It is. It's one of the coolest video cards I've ever tested. It had a max of 52 degrees Celsius on the GPU, and it stayed very quiet. So this is their 9070 QuickSilver. Well, XFX used to be an NVIDIA partner, and they were a successful one for a while. They had some really interesting designs. They eventually got shunned and tossed away, and they became an AMD partner. And since then, they've been one of the more aggressive design units. Now, in the past 10 years, we've seen their designs be kind of clunky and not great. And then suddenly, around the 6000 series, they became, XFX, NVIDIA. Yeah, they were a prime partner there for a while. I think they're a part of Pine Technologies.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly.
You are right.
But anyway, they have evolved. Their 6800 XT that I reviewed years ago was an outstanding card in terms of design, cooling, performance, power delivery, all of these things, overclocking. Fantastic. And they followed that up with the 7900 series, which I did the 7900 XTX with the magnetic fans. You gotta pull these damn things out because but then watch this. Just pop.
Oh,
it
that's
in.
satisfying.
And you can do it live, Josh. You can just throw those in hot.
You don't care.
No.
I mean, electrical, it just works and spins.
Just works.
It's awesome.
Did you hot swap them while it was running?
Magnets. How do they work?
Magnets. How do they work? But anyway, so the 9070 is a little bit hot clocked. They say it, boosts up to 2.6 gigahertz, but under load in different games, it never really did. It kind of matched what AMD had. However, it's still, a 8-pin connection. You can go and adjust the power factor by, plus 10%. It is shockingly fast. In my testing, there were times easily that it matched a 7900 XTX. It consistently went past an RTX 4070, which is a pretty good card. Past generation, the RTX 3080, it just absolutely eclipsed. So the combination of 16 gigs of memory, it's only a 220 watt, officially powered card. Even though it went above that, it's exceptionally well built. It is exceptionally cool. It performed anywhere from a 7900 XT to a 7900 XTX, and it was just competent in everything that it did. It was kind of shocking. I mean, yeah, when you get into things like, Hogwarts Legacy, which, NVIDIA worked very, very closely with them with, ray trace, ray reconstruction, and things like that. It doesn't look as good, doesn't perform as good, but it's really close. And for the price you pay, which is going to be in between $500 and $600 when it's released, you get outstanding performance. You get 16 gigs of memory. You get real ray tracing performance, and they're only going to improve that. FSR 4 is going to be released. It does frame generation. It doesn't do multi-frame generation, but it still does. When you enable FSR and frame generation, it does more than double the performance in that. So, of course, they're not real frames. You have potential latency issues. You have to enable, AMD's anti-latency, anti-lag plus functionality to get, better feeling out of it, but it's still a really solid package for a brand new card that has not been seen on this earth until now. I've been really impressed, and one of the more interesting things, and this is kind of goofy, it's got wings on it that you can take off. So it's all shiny, right? You see all the shiny? I do, yeah. You can pop these wings off, and they're going to offer...
And put on the brought to you by Red Bull ones?
They're going to offer, so you can see that's now gone, and it's holding magnetic. My hand. Yep. It is magnetic. They're offering, in the near future, 3D plans that you can print out your own custom wings. Ooh. If you want. I mean, that's, it's kind of goofy and it's silly, but it's just kind of fun. It's, hey, customize your stuff the way you want to. So, otherwise, the card is incredibly solid. It is a brick. It's got pass-through through the back. It stays incredibly cool. 52 degrees, 52C at max at all times. The sound was just minimal throughout the entire time. It's got advanced display capabilities through DisplayPort 2.1A and HDMI 2.1B, I believe. It's just nuts for, the package that you get. It's a really interesting, fun card. And the sad thing about it is if you're a current owner of a 7900 XT, you don't have much of a reason to upgrade to it. I mean, unless you run a lot of really heavy RT stuff, it's a side grade. Same thing with the 7900 XTX. If you've got one of those, it's like, what are you offering me? It's very little. But if you've got a 7700 XT, if you've got a 6750 XT or a 6800 XT, these are significant upgrades in overall performance and capabilities.
That's where I'm looking. Because the 6800 XT has done me well for a long time, but I'm starting to get itchy.
And it is a jump in performance from that and capability. And you've got the tensor cores, you got FSR 4 and frame generation.
RT hardware, not software.
Yeah. Real RT
ray
hardware.
tracing hardware.
From front to back, not just like 6800 was fully software. 7900 had a kind of front end that was, hardware RT, but then you had to do other things through shaders, and now this is a full RT implementation. So XFX did a really nice job with this package. It's a huge card. It is super quiet. It is super cool. You can actually overclock it, though. If you read my review, overclocking was disappointing. I mean, 2 frames in one game.
Sebastian, you're muted.
The Sapphires apparently go much faster. If you overclock
in general,
them, the
overclocking
FPS
modern GPUs is not exciting.
Pointless.
Unless you're an extreme overclocker. With
the FPS review got a decent out of their Sapphire.
Okay.
Like a noticeable, not just 1 or 2 frames. But I'm just sort of looking at this as, in a purely theoretical sense, it's not going to be a 5080, but it's $300 less.
Right. Even when
Purely
it's way
theoretically.
Even when it's way more than MSRP, it will still be relative to the 5080 hundreds less.
But this is, of course, the biggest question of all is, what will stocks look like tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Were all of those pictures we saw just hollow cubes, or were there graphics cards all the way down?
Hey, speaking of graphics cards you can't buy, let's quickly cover.
Let's go.
We buried the lead. It's the 5070. Yes, NVIDIA launched, well, sort of, the RTX 5070 Founders Edition. At least the embargo was up yesterday. And here it is in my living room.
And a case, so you can carry it from place to place.
Mm-hmm. That recycled paper thing that they use for packaging now. If you look at the actual specs, and I know that NVIDIA does not want us to compare like the 5070 to the 4070 Super. It's a RTX 4070 replacement, not a 4070 Ti or 4070 Super replacement, right? So
because of the price, right?
Right. If you look at the CUDA core count, for example, the new 5070 is at 6144. The 4070 Super was at 7168. The 4070 Super has way more tensor cores, more RT cores. It has more TMUs. Same number of ROPs, same amount of level 2 cache, same amount of memory, but the new one has GDDR7 and it's 28 gigabit per second GDDR7. So you'd think with all that extra memory bandwidth, even with the disparity in CUDA cores, there are some efficiencies. They've done some things with this new architecture, right? So it's still going to be quite a bit faster than that 4070 Super, right?
Now, wait a minute, Sebastian. According to what Jensen said in the keynote at before CES, this was going to be replacing the 4090.
Well, he said
at 500.
4090 performance for 549, and then the small print was, with like frame generation,
everything turned
enabled, like 4x frame generation.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you can do it, but it's still not going to look very good. It's going to be a mess. Like Wendell from Level 1 Tax explains, like if you don't already have a playable frame rate, multi-frame generation is not going to save you because the 1% lows are going to be terrible. That's exactly what I've seen. And especially with the 50 series, the 1% lows on 50 series, there's some kind of stuttering going on somewhere in some of these benchmark runs that makes the 1% low number just terrible.
Yeah.
But if you look at the synthetics, there is some scaling. Like the 4070 Super is behind the 5070 in some of these 3D Mark tests. In fact, all of them that I ran. But when you actually start testing games in Cyberpunk at the Ultra preset with no ray tracing, no scaling, just like in 3D Mark, it scales. The 5070 is faster. It's like 15 frames faster at the same settings at 2560 by 1440. But that's not always the case. So the top two here are best case scenario, and then we'll look at some less impressive results, where here in Age of Mythology Retold, it is slower than the 4070 Super. Here it is in Metro Exodus Enhanced, slower. It's almost tied, but it's slower by like a frame per second.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it trades blows. It's quite boring, but yes, it's trading blows with the 4070 Super, and that's not exciting. It's faster than the 4070 if you're the kind of person who you're not real. I don't even know how to describe it. Like people who don't know any better might get excited about this because it's an NVIDIA card at a price point.
Oh, that you can buy.
If this doesn't tell you anything, I went on at 7:45 to look at what was available on Newegg, and there were still two models of the 5070 available
in stock.
That's
just crazy.
Available.
Yeah, and that tells you everything.
The price was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 749 and 799.
The market will decide on these cards.
Yeah.
It's all theoretical.
The only thing even semi-interesting about this card is the price.
Okay.
It still has good RTX performance.
Hey, it's not a bad. It's just
okay.
not interesting.
It's not always faster than the 4070 Super in RT performance, though, sadly, because it has fewer cores. But here's the real story. You can't compare this to a 4070 Super because I went on PC Part Picker yesterday morning and took this screenshot. 4070 Super.
There's one that's not 4 digits.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 that are $999 or less, like $880, and then it goes to 1,000 really fast, and then there's quite a bit here. There was 51 results, but it went well up into the $1,200 range, I believe. And that's just the way it is. And the 5070 Ti is what, $1,500, something like that. I think that's what the 5080 is, right? And then we could do a live stock check, but I seriously doubt there's anywhere where you can buy one of these cards at what is it, $549 MSRP?
Yes, theoretically $549.
And the 9070 at that price level is a far more exciting graphics card. Let's go to newegg.com live. We're going to look for the RTX 5070 because
Let's do it live.
And
Out of
the
stock.
Asus Prime is your MSRP card, and it's $549 out of stock. Gigabyte
How is that
for
the lowest
$600
price in
stock.
30 days?
Oh, there's an MSI and a Zotac and a Gigabyte. Look at all these MSRP cards. Of course, they're all out of
Look
stock.
at these cards you can't buy.
If you go to newegg.com and start doing some
Turn on in stock and see what happens.
nothing. It's going
I
to
don't
be
have
like
that.
recommended products. Oh, here we go. A Zotac
700. Bargain.
overclocked 5070 for $699. There's only one model. That's it. $700
Kids, don't buy it.
for a card that goes toe to toe with a $599 card from a year ago.
Which will cost you about $1,000 because this is the reality
Now.
we live in now.
Let us pause here for a word from our first podcast sponsor.
Are you still putting off saving and investing because you'll get to it someday? Stash turns someday into today. Stash isn't just an investing app. It's a registered investment advisor that combines automated investing with dependable financial strategies to help you reach your goals faster. They'll provide you with personalized advice on what to invest in based on your goals. Or if you want to just sit back and watch your money go to work, you can opt into their award-winning, expert-managed portfolio that picks stocks for you. Stash has helped millions of Americans reach their financial goals and starts at just $3 per month. Don't let your savings sit around. Make it work harder for you. Go to get.stash.com/PCPer and see how you can receive $25 towards your first stock purchase and to view important disclosures. That's get.stash.com/PCPer. Paid non-client endorsement, not representative of all clients and not a guarantee. Investment advisory services offered by Stash Investments LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk and investments may lose value. Offer is subject to T&Cs.
We are back, and speaking of the RTX 5070 Founders Edition card, it is an exclusive model available only if you review hardware, because it didn't actually launch today. It was going to launch today,
They meant to.
but they don't have any available. I have a feeling this is like a silent recall, because you know the whole ROP thing, and they identified a defect and it's been corrected. It makes too much sense that they went to TSMC and said, all right, we're only going to do verified GPUs that have all their ROPs, no defects, and whatever went out to reviewers. This is, now I'm starting to understand why.
Golden sample.
Do you remember the sort of semi-controversy that didn't really go anywhere with the press sample stamped GPUs?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing those were just ones that were validated to have all their stuff. Just a theory.
Ooh,
Not
ouch.
garbage.
That is ouch.
It's like, this has been hand tested. It has all of its ROPs. Okay, good.
And aside from the good performance we're seeing in the reviews of the new Radeon cards, a good portion of the Radeon excitement stems from the fact that the 50 series launch has been a dumpster fire on top of a tire fire, on top of a power supply cable fire.
Yeah, they're not doing themselves any favors at all. And they've enjoyed such dominance in the market. If you just look at overall add-in board sales, it's like, doesn't matter what they do. Jensen can go on stage and twirl a shield around and just he's just meme fodder at this point. It doesn't even matter because they have 90% of the market share. If you're not talking about laptops with integrated Intel graphics or the dozens of Radeon powered laptops that sell every year. So
What, you're saying Ryzen AI isn't turning everything around?
Yeah,
That guy could sell multicolored spatulas.
Yes.
Andreas Schilling had the scoop that the Founders Edition card was not going to be available. It was then verified. It's going to be available later in March. The one thing about pricing is when you make your own card and you sell your own card in your own storefront, you control pricing. And AMD last generation and the generation before that, and the generation before that, I think,
Yeah.
they had made by AMD reference cards, the MBA program, and they sold them right on AMD.com. And you couldn't always
How'd
get
that go
one,
for them?
but when you'd find them in stock, you could grab them. They were always MSRP. And they are not offering an MBA card for either of their new 9070 GPUs. So I think
And
that's...
as one of their MBAs said that it was actually not worth investing in.
This is not exactly like a 3DFX STB situation here, Jeremy.
No.
So it's all of our partners can still make cards. We'll sell them the
Yes.
GPUs, but we'll also have some of our own for, gamer goodwill. Team Red, let's go.
And the
And
bean counters and the
actually,
MBAs got together and said, no, that's not worth it.
Hey, I've got an RX 6700 XT that I was lucky enough to grab from AMD during, the bad times for MSRP. So, they did develop goodwill, but it is not a winning economic strategy.
I see.
What he said.
All right, next story on the list from Tweaktown. The MSI GeForce RTX 5070 Ti gaming trio is an overclocker's delight.
Yes.
Overclocked?
I'm sick.
Yeah.
I never typed that accidentally.
The bottom line, I like how they have this at the beginning of the article. The bottom line
Is at the beginning.
is that it's a GPU built for overclocking, that you have massive 4K performance gains over the 4070 Ti and 3070 Ti in this NVIDIA-friendly article. And DLSS 4's new Transformer AI model is an impressive update. I think they're just hitting all the marketing bullet points here very
Does
nicely.
seem like that.
Yes, they do. When you go through it, I mean,
Okay.
Coming out a little strong.
you're getting
here.
a 4080 Super for 25% less on the MSRP.
MSRP doesn't exist.
I know it doesn't. And that's so. On the other hand, it's like the TI or TI, if you prefer. It wasn't, it's just a slightly better 5070. No. The TI, we always thought it was the titanium edition, but hey,
Yeah.
what do we know?
Isn't that what it meant? That's why it was capital T, lowercase I.
Yes. You'd occasionally get a different type of chip in there, and it was smashing whatever the previous was, whatever the non-TI version was. With this one, it's essentially equivalent to a card that's one tier higher from the previous generation. Literally the same thing. Really? That's what we've devolved to. And you can't buy either of them anyways. So what's the point? I don't know. It does overclock nicely. They hit 200 megahertz sustained on the boost, and the GPU was sitting at like 60 degrees tops. So hey, impressive.
Yeah, these cards, they all have these massive
gigantic
coolers. It's like
the
they put all
5080 cooler.
They put all of their R&D money into stuff that was, had to cool 600 watts potentially, and then we had all this stuff last generation that was 3 and 4 slots. And the cards this year, they actually are pulling more power than their predecessors. The TGPs are up. But these massive coolers are still complete overkill. If you have the space for it, great, because they run really quiet. The MSI card I tested, it was like 33.6 dBA under load. I couldn't even hear it I had to go over and unplug the CPU cooler to get a noise reading on the
Always a
GPU.
good idea.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Pressure
MSI
reading.
pulled these cards too. I don't think they're selling any right now for some reason. ROPS. Oh no.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe that's really the issue. It's not really an availability problem. It's just a silent recall, and then
They may have done that.
They'll
I mean, it
flood the market.
certainly appears that way. It appears that way that they pulled them off their own site. So.
let's go back to the Radeon topic, the pricing and availability topic, because I wanted to keep the review all about the performance of the card. They're fantastic.
No.
GPUs. The whole thing is it's all context. It's like, yeah, they're great for the money. They're not the fastest GPU you can buy, but they're incredibly good for the money. But then what is the likelihood that tomorrow, we're recording this on Wednesday night as usual, even though I had a comment last week that was just like, you really need to go back and
change that.
You need to update these things when the events happen. Like, okay, sure. I'll go ahead and re-record the podcasts on Friday after. Anyway.
I'd also like to thank AMD for doing this release on a Wednesday and not a Thursday.
It's very convenient.
Was very nice of them.
Guru of 3D has an article about expected Microcenter pricing for tomorrow. We already saw that leak from, I think it was Microcenter that we talked about last week. And obviously the MSRPs were announced at the event last Friday. But that, since there's no made by AMD card, how is AMD going to control?
Essentially, there's no reference price. There's no reference price or a reference card with an associated reference price, is what you're saying.
So you're saying you didn't get that reference?
Oh, for goodness.
It's like, well, our card offers a revolutionary new mounting process, and we're using really expensive thermal interface material, and that's why it's $100 over AMD's suggested ETEL price.
AMD knows they can do. Oh, sorry. AMD's partners know they can do this. We can't really blame AMD. They're not setting the price.
You can blame AMD for the $549 price on the non-XT.
I suppose,
because
yes, that should be.
This is going to be the XTX versus the XT all over again, because the XTX sold out right away.
Yep.
Within minutes, seemingly, and then all you had available was the XT. And they were so close in price that it didn't make any sense unless the other one was unavailable. And that's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. Is the 9070 XT is going to sell out, and there's going to be a bunch of 9070s available.
They've said on record that, well, somebody has, that there are far more XT parts than non-XT.
That would make sense.
But the demand for the XT at $50 more, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
if you had both cards in front of you, you're a fool if you buy the non-XT. If they're both MSRP, if you've got $550 to spend, you probably have $600 to spend. Just put it on plastic. This is America. Charge it and get the better card, and you will never regret it. It's like when you buy a TV. You will never regret going with the biggest one. You will probably regret buying a 55. You're like, yeah, I should have got the 65. It was only $200 more. What was I thinking? No, I should have got the 77. The 85, though, the 98.
It's like, yeah, it's buy something for 3 times more than what you budgeted for.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
You'll never regret going big. Go big or go home.
I'm just going to go home. I'm not going to grab big. Now, I did neglect to look into this far enough, but is the non-XT just a downbend XT, or are there actual physical differences in this chip?
It's the same chip.
No, same chip.
So if they made all XTs and just the few that didn't make it, there's our non-XT version.
Or maybe this will be the return of flashing your card to unlock free shaders.
Oh, I haven't done that in a while.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
Although I saved more than $50 on that one.
You know what else sucks? Melting 12-volt high-power connectors.
Does suck.
And you can build your own thermal watchdog. Here's an article from Hackaday. Prevent NVIDIA-related fires in your home by, hacking the connector. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing.
Use some heat
Nothing at all.
Thermistors.
So kids, do this at home at your own risk. But no, what they're doing is they're attaching thermistors to the pin on the ground and attaching it to an Arduino. And the second that, thanks to some mathematics that Arduino can easily do, when that connector hits about 100 degrees Celsius, it just turns your computer off. The insulators are supposedly rated to about 180, 200 degrees Celsius. So, you've got some safety range there. But yeah, essentially that's all it's doing. It's a work in progress. And as we said, hey, if you're going to play with stuff, you do that on your own risk. We're just letting you know what's out there. And, just a very simple voltage divider with an algorithm I'm not familiar with. I guess it's called the Steinhardt algorithm, determines the temperature of the connection, and boom, you don't have a burning NVIDIA card. On the other hand, you have, modified that connector you don't trust already. So, hey, but on the plus side, at least it'll probably shut off. Super cheap, a lot cheaper than a new video card anyways.
All right. What is the next story?
It's another take on the 12 volt high power.
So this will save us.
This is more geared towards the 50 series and the 12 volt 2x6, which is totally different.
But also requires an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi.
Actually, there should be logic in these things. If every Apple Lightning cable has logic in it.
Yeah.
It can run Doom for crying out loud.
You make a reasonable point.
Why isn't there logic in these things that's constantly analyzing? And I mean, sense pens are obviously, they work when they work, but that's a physical thing. Like, why isn't there logic and active cooling in the cable?
Well, I mean, apparently there's an opportunity for a cottage industry to kind of spring up around solving the problem of the 12 volt high power connector. Now the thermistor,
my hand loomed rounded 12 volt high power.
The thermistor idea was sort of an after the fact thing, kind of a layered on solution, if you will.
A hack.
This solution is in line. It actually uses load sensing resistors. So it places essentially a shunt across the lines and samples that at a fraction of the current flowing through it. So it actually measures the actual current. It's got a USB port on it. This isn't available. This is like a design right now. It's kind of a one-off. If you want to build this sort of thing, it's very, very niche, very, very enthusiast, and you got to be kind of good with electronics. But this is something that this person is looking to commercialize and turn this into something real. So there's more than one approach to solving this problem. But I'm just impressed that people have noticed it so much. That's like there's industrial solutions coming out. People are figuring this out.
You know what? Life would be so much easier if we just go back to 4-pin Molex. It would solve so many things. You could only put so much power.
Preaching to the choir, Josh.
No.
And then you would have less cooling and more innovation because you had to work within that envelope of power and, well, not really cooling, just mainly power.
It got to the point where it was cooling too with those tiny, annoying high RPM fans.
Yeah, Avid on the VSA 100s, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pause here for a word from our second podcast sponsor.
We talk quite a bit about privacy here, and we all know about the lurking dangers of a data breach and identity theft. Unfortunately, that job gets a bit easier for scammers, spammers, con artists, and marketers because they're using the services of massive data brokers which exist online. These brokers have databases with your personal information like names, addresses, and even your online activities. They will harvest and sell your data all around the internet, which unfortunately includes various bad actors. You have now lost control of all your personal data and could be at the risk of identity theft, mail and email spamming, and data leaks via system breaches. To prevent your information from getting away from you, we invite you to take a look at this protective service from Incogni. You have the right to safeguard your own data, and you can empower Incogni to reach out to these data brokers on your behalf to get your personal data removed. Let them deal with the difficulties, hassles, and objections. Incogni will continue to protect your data by staying on top of these brokers to repeatedly request removals as they recollect your information. Yes, that actually happens. Incogni even supports a family and friends plan to spread the benefits around. Get control of your data privacy and visit Incogni.com. Sign up and enjoy a 30-day money-back guarantee to ensure you're completely satisfied with our service. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code PCPerspective at Incogni.com/PCPerspective. That's code PCPerspective at Incogni.com/PCPerspective.
Welcome to Insecurity Corner, your weekly reason to drink.
And our first story in Insecurity Corner comes from Bleeping Computer. 500,000 infected Android devices freed of something called Bad Box.
we're leading with the good news.
Okay.
Sure are.
Yes, Bad Box, or well, technically Bad Box 2.0 because it's a redo of an older one, was particularly nasty because a lot of cheap open Android source project devices shipped with it pre-installed in the factory. They had managed to break into some of the manufacturing lines and were dumping the malware on the device before it ever shipped out. Now, there were also a good 24 Google Play apps that you could click on and, install it yourself. But at the peak, there was millions of devices infected. This particular one was just down to about 1 million or so. A good chunk in Brazil, but also the US, Mexico, pretty much anywhere you can name. There were a good chunk of infected devices. And these are the stupid set-top boxes, the ones you don't even really realize are an Android device. It's just you bought something and it came with this, and that's how it controls it. So what's happened is they've tracked it down, and they've taken every single command and control server and sandboxed them. So this thing can never update itself again. Every bit of traffic goes to try and update itself or to report back or to spill your information is now going into a black hole and being monitored. So it's dead now. And this was a nasty one. I mean, they'd use that random Android-powered toaster or set-top box you had to make that into a proxy, where then they could do a bunch of fake ad impressions or redirect devices to really, really crappy websites. But because the traffic increased, all of a sudden the Google search results increased, and they could also use it to do the link back thing. So they could game the entire algorithm so that these really crappy sites would actually start to come up in the Google search results and infect even more people. There was also really popular for spoofing your IP address and creating fake accounts and just, doing it for credential stuffing, just about anything. It was a Swiss Army knife of maliciousness. So, boom. It is off the air. It no longer works, at least for now. And it's nice every once in a while in 2025 to have a bit of good news. And this is definitely a bit of good news. But that's the end of the good news. Sorry.
Speaking of Android, good news.
Yeah. So Android, when you pick up your phone, your brand new Samsung, or whatever it is, it's already tracking you. Because there are cookies, actually a really nasty one called a DSID cookie, which apparently is rather unique to Google, is tied to Google Play services and the Play Store. So just because those are already present on the phone, it is already phoning home to make sure that, your preference for personalized advertising is respected accordingly, at least according to Google. The documentation is very vague and ridiculously not helpful. And the researcher who did it was more along the lines of an academic saying, it's kind of weird that just the fact that you turn on a new phone means you've already consented to being tracked this way isn't cool. Google's response is more along the lines of, well, his legal argumentation is not valid. He's like, no, I'm a security and privacy researcher. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not saying this is illegal. I'm just saying it's creepy that immediately the second I log into my Google account on the phone, because try and get a Google phone, an Android phone, any phone, up to the point where you're on the desktop without logging into an account of some sort or another. So just by doing that, boom. Link Analytics is already attached to you. It's now got your IMEI recorded. It's got unique cookies that it's already dumping down on it. And I mean, this guy, again, is just security researcher saying that, hey, this is, a little bit creepy. But in Europe with the GDPR, this could become a huge issue because you need to acknowledge that you are sharing PII in the EU. Straight up. And Google has essentially completely ignored this. Again, not that we're saying that they're breaking the law or anything, because this is all just saying that's bloody creepy. I like being Android because Apple tracks me way too much, only to find out that, Alphabet is at least as bad, possibly worse. So yeah, it's just
definitely worse.
Seriously?
Now, come on.
And there's no way. I think someone found like a single Xiaomi phone where they were able to turn it off, and that was it. The entire list of Android phones, there was one Xiaomi phone that they could actually turn it off on.
Jeremy, let's touch upon the previously released Android system safety core that was released late last year that scans all of your messages for images that may be
Offensive to certain...
offensive
Yeah.
to whatever the mechanism is programmed for. Now, they say that this analysis never leaves your phone and gets uploaded to Google servers. You know what I mean? That's me winking. That's me winking for audio listeners. Yeah, but there's just no way of opting out.
Does.
This was automatically installed for you. Doesn't scan your photo library yet.
So you're saying this is worse than having U2 installed on your phone without your choice?
Look, people still talk about that. In fact, that got brought up like in my circle of people like within the last week. So,
hey, we don't forget nor forgive, but
it's a shining example
creepy.
Don't install shit on my device that I'm not asking for.
And if you're going to track me, at least, let me know that you're sniffing up my butt.
Yeah, this came as a surprise to people as well. So, no,
it is.
Google is definitely spying on you and looking at your pictures.
Yes. Right now, even.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now. Thanks, Sebastian.
Next, Firefox. Personal data protection promise is no more. A lot of people are up in arms about Firefox now.
Can't imagine why. Well, still. Because they did some questionable things over the past couple of years. But the quote there is, when you upload or input information through Firefox, you hereby grant us a non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide license to use that information to help you navigate, experience, and interact with online content as you indicate with your use of Firefox. This is a slight change from their, we promise we will not sell data about you, or we don't buy any data about you. So they erased that and replaced it with what I just read. Firefox used to be the thing that, you went to because they were the good guys. They weren't better than Opera. It wasn't Internet Explorer. And as we just said, Chrome and Google have been a little bit creepy, but no. Firefox is on a mad dash to make sure that they are every bit as untrustworthy as the rest of them.
But Jeremy, back on January 30, as recently as January 30 of this year, they said, does Firefox sell your personal data? Nope, never have, never will. Now, all they had to do was delete that, and now they can. So it was never will until we delete that paragraph, and then we will.
This doesn't say that they will. It just says that now they have the option to use anything that you've input into the browser in a variety of ways around this particular planet.
Yes.
A lot of people see
royalty
this
free.
And this is another article that kind of goes with this where they tried to walk it back a bit. But a lot of people see this as a gateway to begin to use your data, massive amounts of data. What could this possibly be used for? What would the input of a variety of... I know. AI training. Or
great.
selling...
Firefox LLM.
Yeah, or maybe pulling all of this data together into a package as
and selling
AI,
it.
Training blob, training data. Nope. But they actually made a post on this to try and say, "Oh no, that's not what we meant to do at all." It's
well, we just meant it's really hard to define what selling data means legally. So, wait, sorry. I'm pretty sure that legally there are definitions to what selling data is.
They tried to defend the fact that, well, what could we do with your input data? We need to do something with it. So they tried to, define what they were allowed to do with your data.
Which was essentially
legitimate
whatever
ways.
they felt like.
But they defined it slightly broadly with whatever we feel like. Yeah, they did.
We don't mean to do it, but, we have to. It's just everyone else we feel left out. And we're pretty sure you're not going to, you did notice. Damn.
Yeah. A Mozilla forum thread, the hot take was, you're not pulling the wool over our eyes. Either remove these vile terms or lose at least half your users, end quote.
Yeah. Because we'll go to we could go to...
They all go to Brave.
No, we can switch to...
They all go to Brave.
Yes, Brave.
Yeah, and that'll be the darling for privacy advocates until that gets exposed and turned into a movie called The Brave Little Web Browser. What's that? Sorry, what?
DuckDuckGo has their own browser now.
What is it, Chromium?
Yep, true.
It is Chromium, but...
Yes.
Oh, I might look into that.
So you're saying we can look forward to a movie a couple of years down the road called The Brave Little Web Browser, and I'll just get really, really sad.
You remember The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh, damn right. That's one of them scarring movies.
It kind of is.
Moving on to gaming quick hits. Our first story, more possible Half-Life 3 leaks.
Oh, yes.
Hey, how can we not talk about Half-Life 3 leaks again, still, even?
Thank you.
But no, there is a person named Tyler McVicker who literally every time a Source Engine update comes out, he rips it apart, looking for variables. And the last two were like a Dota 2 update, and I forget the other game. But there's no alien blood in Dota 2. There's no machinery in Dota 2. You don't really have to worry about AI's AI reaction to NPC characters differing depending on how close you are to them. So he's all using this to say that, hey, this is all part of Project HLX. And he's even going so far as to say it looks like they're reaching the final tweaking parts of the engine, which Half-Life 3 confirmed again, except not.
Nice. Thank you for the phrase.
We shall see.
Thank you.
It had to happen. Or will Gabe disappoint us once again?
He doesn't care. He sits upon his tower of money.
Steam has passed another incredible player milestone, says the story at Game Rant. 40 million concurrent users. The previous high was, I think, 34 or 36 million. So they're just rolling. They're growing. I think the Steam Deck and some of the other handhelds perhaps are helping push this, perhaps.
I kind of think it was the release. I mean, recently would have been Monster Hunter Wilds. That's kind of what pushed it up most recently, in my opinion.
I think it was reality. People don't want to look out the window and news anymore. They just want to plug into a game. Hey, Dystopian Nightmare? That actually sounds pleasant compared to what's going on right now.
Dystopian Nightmare or Touch Grass?
Hey, and speaking of dystopian nightmares, the Steam hardware survey has been updated for February of 2025.
I know you love this segment.
I do. Let's look at the PC video card usage by vendor.
Quick, search for ARC.
Number one on the list is, of course, the RTX 4060, which has finally eclipsed the 3060. I think it's been a little while now, but
thank goodness.
Yeah, it's the 4060 Ti, then follows in the 4070, 3070, 3060 Ti, a laptop 4060, 4070 Super. It goes on. It goes on for a while.
There's AMD with built-in graphics.
Yeah, built-in graphics on an AMD laptop.
I see the 2060
quickly
still
followed
in the top,
by
top 15. The 1650.
The first proper Radeon on this list is the RX 6600 with 0.76% of users. So this is
I see the 580
right here.
Whereas
The
our
580 is still on the list.
The cards that people actually buy are in kind of this price range, the 40, 60, 30, 60 price range. So the AMD could get some significant market share back.
Could happen.
It is time for picks of the week. Josh,
Hallelujah.
Gosh.
please get us started.
All right, give me. Okay, you know what? I actually did something like this not very long ago because I upgraded my X570 based motherboard that did not have a 2.5 or above gigabit Ethernet chip. All of these are essentially the same. You can get it for $13.39 and pick up a reasonable 2.5 gigabit Ethernet chip. Put in your car in your PC. Standard drivers. Yeah, no, it's they just work. I mean, they're not fantastic. It's not an enterprise level 2.5. So you're not going to have that kind of performance, but it's going to be far more than 1 gigabit across the board. So, yeah.
But what are you talking to?
It's a, well, you got to talk to a Nick.
Giga?
In your house. Yeah.
Yeah, like what else have you got that's running 2.5?
Yeah,
Basically,
you got to
Because
buy
I thought about it, but my out is 1. So what's the point?
Doesn't this
Yeah.
help people who feel a little guilty about not using that PCIe 1X slot? I mean, it helps people with that, doesn't it?
Yeah. that.
And it's good for that.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Hey,
Jeremy,
Eero came out
greater
with
than 1 gig.
a new
is-
Wi-Fi 7 thing was 5 gigabit for
Yes, I
$300.
saw that.
True.
Yeah.
Jeremy, greater than 1
bad.
gig here in the States is very, very possible and widely available.
Oh, and Kanukistan, we don't do that.
I have
We get
1.4 actually. So
Speaking of
So anyway.
Pakistan, Jeremy, your pick.
A semi-decent deal on a 9800 X3D. Over $100 off.
Wow.
It
And not even
is
bundled.
No, this is just an upgrade. If you're running something that's not quite up to snuff and you're looking for an upgrade to your AM5, little flash of the BIOS if you haven't done it yet, and you too can have a very impressive Zen 5 processor and not have to worry about maybe disabling some of it because you don't want to deal with latency. It's tempting, but I want to see how quickly the graphics cards sell out tomorrow. And then maybe I'll think about it.
We should do some sort of live event, like watching stock levels. That
Plummet.
actually sounds terrible.
Yeah,
All right.
It'd only take 5 seconds, maybe 10.
That's true. It's like, all right, that's over with. Let's do some gaming. Let's just stream some gameplay. All right, Brett, your pick.
occasionally you need to run a business out of your home ether, probably cable. A lot of people are getting cable, maybe DSL, maybe even fiber if you're as lucky as Sebastian. But occasionally that stuff breaks, like a tree falls on your house, or maybe tree falls on your fiber optic line, or the power goes out in your neighborhood. And I mean, you still need to kind of do business occasionally. So I have actually just recently purchased one of these devices, which is a essentially cellular to networking device as a backup. The switch behind me, the Dream Machine Pro, actually provides for a backup internet. So it'll just fail over automatically to this. And I'm going to get this. It's PoE, so it's able to be powered without power adapter. It has a eSIM or a regular SIM, so you can get various ways of doing some fallback. The eSIM is available directly from the company, usually about less than $200 for like a year's worth of data, like about 100 gig or something like that, or maybe a little bit more. But I don't remember all the numbers off the top of my head. It wasn't too terrible, but especially if you're using it for fallback. They have portable ones. I mean, I could take this on the road with me and like out.
No battery?
Like that. It does not have a battery. No,
Okay.
it doesn't have a battery. But I have, my rack has a very large UPS on it, and it's PoE, so it'll run for some period of time.
Yeah.
After electricity goes out here. But basically, if the electricity goes out at the house, you kind of better be closing some things down, or maybe switching to a laptop, rather than your desktop.
Yeah.
But the Wi-Fi will stay on here for quite some time. Like I said, the UPSs are pretty good, and all my access points are all Ubiquiti access points, also powered via PoE and the UPS on the rack.
Yeah. No,
So,
we've got one of those.
It's not cheap.
Ingress point
It's not
at
cheap
work.
though. It's expensive. It's
No.
it's $500, but it does 5G. You can get cheaper ones that do only 4G, but you're limited in speed. Even Ubiquiti themselves sells a 4G version of this. It's relatively inexpensive, but you have to get you have to get an access card for it. So you'll end up paying for another line, usually on a monthly basis. So even though it's cheaper, you'll end up paying as much or more very quickly with that kind of system, because it does not have an eSIM that allows you to sort of get a yearly subscription, pay as you go kind of thing. There are different ways to do
For
this.
obvious reasons.
I chose this method because it was fairly straightforward, and I was able to kind of bundle the eSIM with the device. And it's worth it for running a company from your home as a backup.
Yep.
Kent, your pick.
There's a lot of people out there that are really wanting to build a new gaming system that, their old system is, it won't run modern games well, and they can't get new hardware. They're really disappointed. Then there's another group of people who are really just upset because their 4080 and 7800X3D are no longer the top dogs, but they can't get the new ones either, so they're pouting and not playing games. Whichever one of those you are, try reading a book. How about try reading 41 books by the highest selling author in the history of humanity, Agatha Christie. There are Hercule Poirot novels here. There are Tommy and Tuppence novels. I'm pretty sure there's some Miss Marple stories in here too. And I've read a lot of Agatha Christie, and they're fantastic books. They're fantastic mysteries and memories. So if you're not gaming because you're pouting or you just can't get new hardware, try reading some books. And it's $1.99 for Kindle for all 41 right now.
So
That is great.
How many of these murders do you actually think she committed in those 11 days she disappeared in 1926?
All of them.
That's me too, yeah.
But don't be off-put if you read The Mysterious Affair at Styles first, because her writing style matured a lot after that.
Yes, that's not a good one to start with.
Yeah. Okay, my pick is a pair of small... this is my requirement. I wanted a small pair of USB-powered desktop speakers. And I've been using this older Dell set for just the random instances where I want to plop down some speakers wherever I am and not use headphones. The Creative Pebble V2 is super cheap right now on Amazon. It's $25. These actually sound very good. They sound way better than the old Dells I was using. But for even less, you can get the white ones. $18.99. So I bought these thinking, white, it'll go good with, my old computer stuff. I don't care what color it is anyway, because I just kind of tuck these behind the monitor. And they sound way better than I was expecting. I'm like, yeah, they're $19, whatever. They have this little passive radiator on the back.
Really?
They're larger than they look. Like in the picture, I'm thinking there's going to be like 2 inches across. No, these are pretty big. And the driver is small, but I don't know. They do a really good job for $19. If you have an application where you want some sound and you don't want to have to worry about finding power for it, just plug it into USB 2 or higher and off you go.
Everyone needs a pair of sound balls.
And that will do it for this episode of the PC Perspective Podcast as we reach nearly midnight on the East Coast of this live stream extravaganza. We had a lot of fun. We laughed
crying.
if you're trying to buy a 9070 XT for $599.
Yes.
But who knows? Maybe you'll get lucky. Let us know in the comments if you were able to find one at MSRP.
Yes.
And until next week, thank you and good night.